Hello, everyone. I think we're live. It's always awkward because there's a pause moment, but hello. I'm Allie Wyatt. I am the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective. We are a platform for empowering women of all different backgrounds as they start their entrepreneurial ventures and scale their entrepreneurial ventures. We have a private membership community called the 10th House, and the 10th House is a place where you can go to find amazing access to first and foremost other founders by stage, by industry, by geography. We also have incredible educational resources every week. We're teaching different workshops on everything from how to build a customer acquisition model to how to think about hiring and recruitment to how to think about raising capital. And we also have amazing resources that our founders have sort of crowdsourced and shared with one another in order to be able to level up, whether it's a CRM system or your email service provider. You have vetted testimonials from other founders, which is invaluable. And finally, we have incredible discounts from a wide variety of different corporate partners, from Squarespace to SoFi and JustWorks, that allow you to get access to price levels that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get access to as a small business. But without further ado, I'm super excited to have Marika Frumes here. Did I pronounce your last name correct?
Frumes.
Yeah, good. Frumes. So I didn't pronounce it correctly, but Marika Frumes, who is an amazing friend of mine. I've been watching her from afar and just been dazzled by her ability to build these very special communities. But by way of her, the many accomplishments that she has, she is co-founder of Her USA. She created a community that empowers women. So we are running in the same lane. As founder of Us, she built a network of conscious entrepreneurs. And her most recent community venture is Misha, which connects pregnant and new moms in virtual facilitated pods grouped by birth month for the purpose of providing much needed resources, information, and support during the vulnerable transition to motherhood. And between her companies, Marika actually facilitated hundreds of growth-minded connection-forward experiences, which I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with her on one of them way back when. I don't even know if you remember this, but for a program we did with Girl Boss, Marika.
I do. Yeah.
But anyways, I want to get right into questions because there's lots that I have for you, and I've been fortunate enough to sort of watch your journey as you have built these communities. So you're a very intentional community builder, obviously, but also a gatherer. And from Her to Misha to your early days at the Standard, you've been getting people together in a way that creates impact. Can you talk a little bit about the difference of gathering with impact versus gathering for the sake of gathering? And then also speak to how you think things have changed in light of the pandemic when it comes to
sure. That's a great question. So gathering for impact versus just gathering, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so first, if I may, prior to coming on with you this week, I've been thinking about why it is that, I was like, was I born a connector or a gatherer, or is it something that I grew into? And I don't have a great answer for that yet, because I was coming prepared to offer tips and like how you can be a better gatherer. But I actually think to start answering your question, part of the reason that I so focus on impactful gatherings is because of my childhood experience, right? So I was an immigrant. I came here at a very young age, did not have an easy transition because, middle school is hard already, but when you're not, fluent in English, or, you're maybe not wearing the right things, it can be even more challenging. So I started basically, trying to provide value by doing things, right? Rather than just being, I was like, well, if I'm helpful, like people will, find me that I should be at this table. And I think also because of a little bit of that trauma as a young kid, the gatherings that I started leading as an adult really, for me, the biggest intention was that everyone at the table is seen and heard. And when you think about that, like, isn't that all of life? We all yearn to be seen and heard. So it wasn't with some formula to create impact. But of course, when we are able to see ourselves at the table and truly connect, of course we create immense impact because people need authentic connection to truly, thrive. So
Right.
in personal and business settings, I've started to use a similar formula where, look, like in a personal setting, I'll try to keep it a little bit toned down and people won't necessarily know that I'm facilitating. But when it comes to networking or these communities, like, yeah, there is a framework. And the reason for the framework and for that intentionality is we all have very limited time, right? So when we come together with people that have built something or, like are doing something really interesting, let's maximize that experience to create an opportunity for everyone to share. Because we've all been at those events where someone dominates the conversation or you're stuck talking to the person to your left or your right and you really want to, really meet the person across the table.
We'll have to pause you on those too, and get some advice on how to navigate out of those conversations. Because I think so many of us, especially as we start to get back together, there are those dominant individuals, and you're trying to figure out, how do I gracefully also move on and meet as many people as possible.
Yeah, but the second part of your question was about pandemic and how that has shifted. I think, the positive, a silver lining for us has been more intentionality around how we're gathering. Right now, I think there's so much gratitude, right? I know you hosted a beautiful gathering a couple of nights ago, and I'm sure you can speak to the gratitude I'm sure you felt for people that were like, thank you for doing this. We haven't felt this
Yeah.
connection in such a long time. So just that alone, I think for us right now that we're thinking about, because there is more precautions necessary, right? That
Yeah.
alone is powerful for us to, instead of just throwing together an event and thinking about, the logistic of the flowers or what's for dinner, we're like, okay, what's the best way to make this come together that everyone feels safe, that everyone, that we're accommodating different people's comfort zones right now. And that's good, it's just
Yeah.
being thoughtful.
Right. Right. In terms of, you actually had a story for when you first launched her.
Yeah,
And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the evolution of her,
yeah,
because it started in Stockholm, I believe, and then you brought it to the USA with your partner Baba, and you guys had one dinner,
yeah,
right? And that dinner was an example of how you don't want people to
yeah.
connect.
Thanks for remembering that. So I'll start that story by saying nothing that I've ever built was built with the intention of creating a business. Like Misha did not start as me intending to build a business, but now I'm doing that because when you're a natural community builder, you don't think that it's actually something that is a value add when real, because it's so natural, right? But that first dinner was a similar experience where we weren't intending on creating a community or something, businessy. We just wanted to bring together women in a space where we could collaborate and support each other. And we didn't know what that would feel or look like, but we just, we had an amazing network and we sent an invite and 25 people showed up. And that evening, one of our other partners had said, I'm going to invite this woman who won the Networker of the Year award. And we kind of were like, sure, we trust your judgment. This woman can be our guest of honor. And she proceeded to spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about, rather than sharing her successes in a way that was value additive to everyone at the table, it was literally just like a kind of a feature dump of her successes, and which made everyone feel much smaller and that they should be probably doing more. So yeah, she basically focused on her accolades, and what resulted as a result of that, everyone, when we went around the table, introduced themselves with what they did, and kind of in a similar suit to that guest of honor, all the amazing things that they were working on. So we left that dinner and we all felt, or at least I did, I felt like there was certainly an ego boost, that I was like, wow, we had all these amazing women at this table and, like I must be cool because I was there. But then at the same time, there was definitely some imposter syndrome. And then the third wave was like, this doesn't feel right for me personally, because everything that I always intend in a gathering, like there was a lot of ego here, but there wasn't a lot of connection. So Baba and I had a coffee the next day, and it was clear that something very powerful happened at that table, because it was magical to have 25 women sitting together and sharing. But we both knew that there was a better way. So that's where the ask was born for our next dinner. We created this format. First of all, we started it with a quick 3 breath meditation. So this was also 5 or 6 years ago when Palo Santo and meditation were not the
I was
norm.
gonna say, how did you get people on board with, getting into that space given some people might have been, especially 3 years ago, like you said, meditation wasn't huge,
Yeah, no,
and
people were
energy clearing
definitely,
wasn't like quite as mainstream.
people were uncomfortable. But always after every single time in those 3 minutes, the energy in the room shifted. So I think also as hosts, it's our job to lead people and not necessarily always take, input for what people want, because sometimes people don't know what they want. So you have to kind of show them what they might, that's growth, right? So the most special experiences, like even if you think about Burning Man or some of the more alternative gatherings, like people don't show up there knowing exactly what's going to happen, but then they leave, and the more wowed they were, surprised, or gotten outside of their comfort zone, the more memorable that experience would have been. So anyways, but that second dinner was magical. It was, I think I told you, it was April Uptel, who was our guest of honor that for that second one. And she was a mom of two. She was in her late 40s or early 50s at the time, and really spoke vulnerably about the shift of working in fashion and then going into tech, and talking about her being, the oldest woman in the room. And it was great because it set the stage for everyone else to feel like, okay, great. Like I actually have some things that I'd like to get off my chest or get some input on or get some help with. And so then the ask was born. And through that, I learned that first of all, we really struggle asking, but we all really connect through our vulnerabilities versus our, accolades and resumes.
I love that so much because there is that total point of discomfort after you've heard all of the people going in front of you
Yeah.
to be like, oh, well, like what I was going to talk about isn't good enough,
Yeah.
particularly if it relates to what you do. But I want to talk about the ask because I think that that's something that is a superpower for you, Marika.
Thanks,
And
Allie.
it's because you do it in a way that's really authentic. And you've talked before in an article about how you felt like, particularly for women, we oftentimes go about asking in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's part of sort of why we're not receiving on the other end of that. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
Sure. And I'll really try to, there's so many ways we can talk about asking, right? But for the purposes of our conversation, I'm going to think about our audience, who are female founders, really spending their days hustling, working their tails off. All of us are, in our own little silos. And when we're working so hard on one mission, it's sometimes easy to forget that when we need something, right, there's people that are willing to help us, but it's all about how we approach them that will mean the difference between our ask being responded to with potentially help or like completely ignored. And so specifically, I put together just 8 points that I started to notice from the dinners that we would have, that I was like, like if people were a little bit more strategic, and authentic about their asks, I think they would go much further. And if it's helpful, maybe I can talk about some of these points.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Okay, so point number one, and like also we're probably thinking about email because a lot of the time these asks start with emails, but the same can go for IRL. But the first thing you want to do is you want to establish for yourself and for the person that you're emailing or talking to, why is it that person that you're going to, right? So let's say, for instance, Allie, I'm going to use you as an example. I'm going to bet you get a ton of pitches for various investment opportunities. And some of them, might catch your attention because you see the value in the particular company, but maybe a company that wouldn't have initially gotten your interest, you still respond to because they've clearly done the homework on you and they know what you value, and they're presenting their idea in a way that's really resonant for you. So they're striking an emotional chord with you. And that's the same thing that we should all be doing anytime we approach a person for help. Like, why them? So in a way, it's a little bit of a validation for that person of what their superpower is in this specific instance, and also like a little mini ego boost because we like to feel that, we're good at something, or that people are recognizing us in our zones of genius. So that's number one. Number two is be as genuine as you can be. I think sometimes we feel like in the founder community, we really need to come off with all of like our feathers and peacocking, like our company's doing really well and all these amazing things. When actually people more respond to, and trust me, I've seen this so often with also myself, when you show people that you're maybe having some difficulties, that is going to often incite more responses because people feel more empathetic and connected to you as a human being. And again, we're all wired for connection. And so when someone's actually reaching out and needing help, it's instinctual that we are more apt to help when you're being genuine versus just like touting all your accolades. Okay, so number three is be extraordinarily clear with what you're asking. And I'm sure you get these emails all the time too, where you're like, is someone asking me to look at their deck? Is someone asking me to invest? I have no idea. There was a period of time where I was on, I think I wound up on an Instagram list of investors, or my picture was on a fund. And so I started getting all these emails, and I'm like, why am I getting all these emails? Like, I think they're pitching to me, but like, why are people pitching to me? And so finally I just asked one of these women, like, is this a pitch? Because it wasn't clear, like people be like, can I send you my product and this or this? And I was so confused. And so that again illustrated like, hey, make sure the person you're emailing very soon after they start reading this email understands what this is all about. And that's also an honoring of time, because people aren't going to necessarily want to be reading an extremely long email. They want to understand what you want.
I think the other thing, honoring their time, but what that does is also save your own time.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Okay. So then the fourth thing is when you're asking, and in our world, this happens a lot for contacts, right? Whether it be contacts of potential investors you could connect with, whether you're giving examples of contacts of people that could be great hires or whatever, like generally the contact ask, give people examples of who or what space, because it'll allow their creative brain to like, instead of making them creative on their own, you're literally fueling their connector brain and being like, oh, she wants to connect with Jeff Bezos. Okay, great. So that probably means that I should probably connect her to Larry and Sergey at Google. Do you know what I mean? Like you're like setting the stage for the types of people.
I mean, those are pretty big asks, but yeah. I'm like, wow.
Those asks, I'm all good.
Maybe I should ask Marika for an intro to Jeff Bezos.
I mean, imagine, I wouldn't be surprised. So, okay, be very specific and give examples. And then the number 5 thing is provide your askee all the material that they would need to help you with your ask. So specifically, let's just say you've just contacted Allie and you're like, Allie, I know you're really good friends with the people at Light Speed Ventures or whoever the fund was that you did the event with the other day. I would so benefit from an introduction to this or this person because based on these and these things, I think there's a really great fit here. Below, I've attached a template that you could customize if you feel that the connection is mutually beneficial, to save you time. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, no one does this, okay? When we're asking for someone to help us and you're asking for an introduction, that's if that person is thoughtful, and generally they are because they're successful and that's why you're asking them for help. They're going to spend minimum 5 minutes, most of the time 10 to 15 minutes, crafting an email that's showing value for both the person that they're emailing and trying to put you in a great, or in a good light. So it's like you're already asking them for help. And if they're going to spend 15 minutes out of their precious day, what is our most valuable resource? Time, right? Like they want to help you, but do the work for them so that it could take them 2 minutes. They could fill in a couple of the blanks and customize it to be more in line with them, but you're much more apt to get a positive connect or even a response when you've already done the work.
You're reading my mind. I say this to people all the time because it's like you'll get, and you genuinely want to do it. And by the way, it doesn't take me 5 or 15 minutes. It takes me like an hour because I'm poking through their deck. I'm trying to find the good nuggets. I'm like, trying to pitch them in the most perfect way possible because I genuinely want there to be a connection. So
exactly. And so also for you, like if you're utilizing your network, right? Our network is very important. And I'm not saying that we should be, like holding it like that. No, quite the opposite. But we really need to be thoughtful, because if we're not, our network starts to lose faith in us, and then no one wins. So that really helps the person. And like, provide the info about you. Just so do your own little write up of why, like be your own little cheerleader in that write up. Okay, next. La, la, la. Let's see. Provide all the material. Oh yeah. Okay. Always with gratitude. No brainer. But like, guys, like, sometimes just people have these assumptions that everyone's around to help us, especially when we're in our own little silo and like all we can think about is our own company. But that's not necessarily what's going on in the outside world. So just always express gratitude and follow up. If you don't hear back for a week, follow up. It doesn't mean that the person doesn't want to help you. Just follow up in a thoughtful way where you're reminding them that you're fully aware that their schedule is head to toe, but you're still thinking about them. And if they have the time, you'd really appreciate it. And now if they don't respond to you, because by the way, that can happen and that's fine too. We can't, people have their own lives going on there. You never know what's on the other end of that email. And it's not personal. I think that's super important for all of us to keep in mind. It's just that person honestly could be completely overwhelmed in an energy low. Like there's so many things, right? But something that I always say to you afterwards, if you never heard back in like 3 weeks or a month, I follow up for the last time and I say, hey, I know that you have the world on your shoulders. Don't worry about this ask. I'm just really like looking forward to seeing you the next time our paths cross, and let me know if I can support you in any way. The reason I do that is, when like someone doesn't help you or something, like there's an email that's gone unanswered for months, the other person on the other end of that never feels good about it. And so their natural instinct is going to try to be to hide from you because they actually feel a little bit like shame, not embarrassed, but like they're not thrilled that they didn't get back to you. And so you don't want that, because if you're asking them for help, there's clearly, some sort of relationship or potential value that both of you can bring to each other. So leave the space clear for when you do run into each other. That person doesn't skulk away from you and is like, oh my God, they're going to ask me about that thing. But that person's like, oh, the last interaction that we had was them asking if I needed anything and wishing me well. So it's just energetically leaves a nice tie.
oh, that's so beautiful. And it's so, so true. It's like, I actually posted something on my Instagram about being a ghoster,
Yeah.
but like being
I saw
present
that. I
with the people I'm
reposted that.
with. And the thing is like, it's true. Like I'm such a ghoster, but I feel like when I'm with people, like I'm really leaned into the conversation. And I always feel like complete poop when I don't get back to people, and it's like I beat myself up about it. And I think that's most people. It's a very
Yeah,
human emotion. It's like nobody wants to leave somebody hanging on purpose.
totally. Yeah.
So that's a really beautiful way you're right. Like then I'm like, oh, I don't want to see that person. I totally forgot. I just realized I forgot this. And that's a really like wonderful piece of advice and not very intuitive.
And Allie, I would say in your case, because there's the reverse of all of this, right? Because we're constantly also saying no or trying to, protect our time. I would create a couple of canned responses and keep them in your Gmail or whatever email you use. And just, when you just know you don't have the bandwidth, just click that canned response where I'm so grateful that you thought of me. This is really meaningful for me that, you think that I could be helpful right now. I'm in a season of saying no. I'm just completely overwhelmed with starting this new company. I just moved into a new home and I don't have energy to spare. However, if you follow up with me in 6 months, maybe the conversation could be different. And then that person's like, cool, like I don't need to bug her again.
And you know what? And anybody who doesn't follow Marika that is listening, you have to follow her on Instagram, because she actually, every once in a while, you'll do these really wonderful canned responses that don't feel canned at all, by the way. They're so genuine. And it's so true that like if we have a go-to thing that we say, it takes up so much energy too to say no and figure out, how am I going to say no? What should I say to them? Like, I feel really bad. I feel like I should be saying yes,
Yeah.
but I just don't have it in me
Yeah.
to do so right now. So she does really amazing things. But before we wrap, I really want to talk about Misha, because you started this new community space really for moms, for new moms, which I became a feminist when I had children, because I
Yeah.
discovered how lonely and hard it is to be a mom and go through that process and see your body change. So I want you to speak a little bit more to why you started it and what you're doing now, and for all the moms out there or dads that have, a partner that is going through this, for them to be able to hear what you do and how
Yeah.
to support
Thanks.
their significant other.
So, like I mentioned, none of the things that I've started were started with the intention of creating businesses. This truly came out of my own personal need. I became pregnant in 2019 and had, I guess I could call myself a modern mom. Like, I didn't have a lot of pictures of me holding my belly and smiling and being like, yay, my life is perfect. Like, it was actually quite the opposite. I felt sad. I was really grappling with the loss of my identity, after 37 years of building
Yeah.
myself and really traveling the world, building my communities, that all of a sudden I was like, oh man, like, who am I now? Because I'm not going to be able to do any of that stuff. And it actually, like, it really hit me hard. So I kept going to Hatch because they were the only ones that marketed to me.
I'm right above a hatch right now, by the way.
Are you? Yeah, but they had these events, right? And so my purpose of going to Hatch was truly to meet other moms. And
Yeah.
so I was like, great, I'll learn something, but like, I'm going to meet other moms. But unfortunately, after the event, all the other moms would get up and leave because we're not great at, being connectors for ourselves. And not everyone can turn around and say, hey, how are you? Like, there's
Yeah.
people are like, okay, whatever, I'm going to go home. So finally, after months of like these events and not meeting anyone, I was like, okay, I remember actually Googling down to earth pregnant influencer. And that's where I was like, I've hit rock bottom, because I've just literally tried to find like pregnant people to follow. And so actually I identified at that moment, there's something missing because I can't find what I need. And
Hmm.
so as a community builder, I was like, okay, I got to figure this out for myself. So I put out a post on Facebook and asked for anyone that was delivering in January to comment, or having friends comment. And so soon I had 20 women, and I put them all in a WhatsApp group and I started facilitating it very lightly, nothing crazy, but the intention was like, let's get to create a safe space so that we're open and to ask each other for what we need when we do have these children that come into the world. And then, like, honestly, it's extraordinarily similar to exactly what you're doing with Female Founder Collective in the 10th house, but for our niche being modern, pregnant, or moms that have just delivered, to have a community that understands them, because it's so important to be with the people that are going through the same things as you at the same time. And then, like, the resources, the countless hours spent on all the stuff that you have to get, like, we've taken care of all of that for you. It's all crowdsourced, it's all available. And
Amazing.
community, so it's
It's
super. I mean,
amazing.
our models are exactly the same,
Yeah.
different markets. And
It is. But
yeah,
it's for new moms, it's like, I don't know. It is similar in that, like, I feel like when you're a founder, it's the most lonely thing on the
yeah,
planet. You're constantly looking around trying to find people that know what you're talking about, or like that you can talk to about an issue you're having with an employee, or like when your sales are dipping and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm paying for this out of my pocket. Like, how am
yeah,
I going to keep going? It's amazing that also with moms, like, it's so new. Everything's so new. You have no idea what you're doing. And you have to be an expert all of a sudden on all things parenting.
yeah. And actually, especially women that are members of the Female Founder Collective, I think we're especially vulnerable and prone to
Yeah.
having a hard time, because generally, when you are kind of a go-getter and you've clearly done things in your life that have landed you in great professional arenas, it's very disorienting to all of a sudden be like, whoa, I don't know anything about how to do this. And that's by design. Like, motherhood, no one knows how to do it. So it's extremely isolating and it is lonely. And a lot of the women that actually joined Misha, I think at first they probably did it to support me, because some of them were friends. But all of them now are like, oh my God, like it's just, you don't know you need it until you're in that space. And it's so important to just have a community that can support you, not necessarily just with things that you need to buy, but just being in the same space with someone emotionally when it's hard.
Yeah.
Same with founders. Like, gosh, this is not for the faint of heart. And I'm so excited for my boardroom because I just like, like want to have a communal crying session sometimes.
Oh, I love that. Well, Marika is magic, as you all can very clearly see, and you are a wealth of knowledge. I love, like, I would like wanted her to be my life coach, by the way,
Uh,
because like you do seem to have it figured out. But I do love how vulnerable you can get, but then also just giving such tactical pieces of advice on the struggles that we are all having is super helpful. So, can you tell everybody where to find you?
sure. I'm at
And Misha Pod.
Marika Frumes, but Misha as at Misha Pod. So MYSHAPODS. And so if you have any pregnant friends, it's an amazing gift. Honestly, it's like the gift that
And
keeps
do you
on.
have a giftable? Like,
Yeah, it's on the website. It's mishapods.com. Actually, we could put that in.
awesome. Yes, that's an amazing way to go on. And that's like, it is. It's the perfect gift at the baby shower that for like the person that already has everything off of her registry.
Yeah, and it's
So,
also for the mom that's like, "What, a baby group? I would never do that." Like, those are the
yeah.
exact people that are like, "Oh, wow, this is I never knew I needed this," and they do really well in Misha.
And for those that haven't seen it, watch Working Moms. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, having founded the business you founded, you need to watch it. It's amazing.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
like working moms that are in a baby group.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Thank
It's
you for that.
hysterical. Anyways, thank you all so much for being here. Marika, you are the best.
Thanks
We
for
are
having
so
me.
grateful for you to give your time and
Pleasure.
for being a member of 10th House and just everything that you do
Thank you
for
for
all of
letting
us.
me share. It's honestly been a really challenging week, and this just gave me some good energy. So thank you.
Oh, good. All right. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye-bye.